Okay, our guest tonight started doing fan work and is now the captain of a boat leading investigators toward somebody named Cthulhu. Mike Mason started editing a Cthulhu fanzine called The Whisperer. He organized UK Cthulhu writers, worked for Games Workshop as Black Industries line manager for the Emmy Award-winning Warhammer 40k RPG, Dark Heresy, before the line moved to FFG. Now he's the co-writer of the Cthulhu 7th edition. He is the man in charge of the most popular horror game around. Please welcome Mike Mason. Mike, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks very much. It's thanks and it's good to be here. Yeah, thank you.
So, first of all, how does it feel, man? Things are shipping. People are seeing pictures of their books coming toward them. How does that make you feel?
Very glad, very glad. It's been a long road, and it's great to actually finally see the books arriving with with people, so they can actually get their hands on them and look at them properly and read them and play games. So it's the kind of final kind of culmination of what have been some years of work for me, getting that book out there. So it's just great to see. Yeah, very
What,
pleased.
what was it? What did you feel like when you got a physical copy of the book in your own hands? Did it meet your visions? Did it meet your standard? Did it even feel real?
It's kind of slightly unreal. Yeah, it's slightly unreal because I've been waiting so long to actually have a physical copy myself. And I always kind of said the project kind of wouldn't be done in my mind until I actually had a copy, and copies were going out to people, and now that's happened. It's slightly unreal, but things have started to sort of sink back in now, and it's just kind of it's great to have. But my mind is now on what I'm currently working on, which is books down the line. It never
Mm-hmm.
ends in a sense. So it's just great to have put a kind of a full stop at the end of that particular project for now, and feel that yeah, we got that one done. But obviously I'm still keen to we all want to get to the next book out, which is the kind of the key final book in the Kickstarter is called Cthulhu. So we're just putting the final touches to that at the moment to get that done and out to backers, and then out to everyone else. So once that's done, and then the last sort of shipment goes to backers with all the other little bits and pieces, then we can hopefully draw a line under that and say that was done, and we can move forward again in that sense. But yeah, no, it's all been very good, very good.
But isn't it cool? It's cool that it's a beginning of being able to hear the stories from the people who've been playing the game finally coming to you, where it's not just the beta testers and your inner circles.
Yeah, well, it's finally kind of really launching out into the wild, really. Going beyond the play testers, as you say, beyond the backers, into the guys who pre-ordered it, and then into gaming stores and everyone else, you know, and there's just so much potential there in terms of the stories and the games that people are going to be running. It's just kind of overwhelming, really, because there's so many people around the world playing Cthulhu already, and this is obviously with it, whenever a new edition of a game comes out, it kind of reignites people who have maybe not played for a while. It
Mm-hmm.
also brings new people into the game, so it's a very exciting time for that.
One of our local conventions put out a poll saying for this year, what game do you definitely want to see play? And of course, there was Pathfinder, there was Adventurers League, Dungeons Dragons, Savage Worlds, and of course, right under there was very happily Call of Cthulhu.
Great to hear. Yeah. Marvelous.
So, what was your favorite moment from beta testing this? Do you have a favorite story of a session or an experience where things really clicked for you that you were on the right track?
It's interesting. I don't think there was necessarily one particular session, but the one that kind of stands out in my mind. I'd already done some playtesting, and Paul Frick, my co-author, had also had been playtesting for a while as well. But we kind of got to a point where we'd kind of got to the rule set that's kind of probably closest to where we ended up with. I was running a game for some people at a UK convention called Continuum. And in fact, around the table were a few game designers themselves, Pete Cake Bread and others who, and this was the first time they'd been anywhere near the kind of new addition to the playtesting. So I ran a game for them, and that just went really well. And it was the first time I'd used what has become an optional mechanic in the new system, but luck spending, where you can spend points of luck to adjust some of your rolls. And as it was a one-shot game, I just said, we can use this mechanic. You can use the luck to adjust your rolls, and they really took to it very quickly and were spending lots and lots of luck very quickly, and really progressing well through the adventure and feeling they were accomplishing things, and it was all going really well. Towards the end, when the scenario kind of involves a dark young of Shub-Niggurath towards the end, who's wandering around and causing them all sorts of mischief, and they decide that they just need to escape and run away and hopefully get clear of the whole thing. And so they're in the car, and this dark young steps out in the middle of the road, basically they'd all spent all their luck by now. They had very little left, and so when it really counted, they couldn't really use their luck anymore. They just spent out. And so it really drove home to them and for me that luck is very much in line with the kind of downward spiral of sanity and things like that within the Call of Cthulhu game. It's a kind of a mirror to that you can use this resource to do a lot of things, but if you don't use it wisely, it will come back to bite you, and it really did, very much, because they all died. But they at the end of the session, I sort of obviously got a bit of feedback and asked them how they felt about it and how the luck worked for them, and they loved it. They felt that it really, that they had not only had the keeper spent the entire session effectively trying to screw them, but they had also screwed themselves. And so they just thought that was perfect because it just fell completely in line with the way that Call of Cthulhu tends to play, and along with the push mechanic and things like that.
That's what I was just going to ask you about. Speaking of players, I just love that in the rules of the keeper taunting the player with all the horrible things that could go wrong if the pushed roll fails. Can you lend some more insight into the development of that, or a great example of that being tested out?
Sure. Well, Paul came up with the actual idea for the pushed roll, and as soon as he kind of talked it through with me, I kind of went, that it makes absolute sense for Call of Cthulhu, because again, it's Call of Cthulhu is a game that actually the players have an ability to actually make things worse for themselves without, they really have an ability to kind of make matters worse for themselves. And so pushing really kind of exemplifies that, because it plays on the desire to achieve something. It plays on the desire to get something done. But the ramifications of failing that risky role is can be quite tremendous. And what we kind of realize is that whilst a lot of the time the keeper will foreshadow the pushed roll and say, well, if you fail this roll, something bad is going to happen. It's likely that someone might hear you, or the cultists might see you, or whatever. And so you can't really think. But what we found really quickly was other people around the table were actually throwing in ideas, going, well, that could happen, Mike. But what about if surely if he's playing with that book, surely it might just summon a dimensional shambler or something, by accident. And that's even better than my idea. Yeah, we'll go with that one. We found that players are even crueler than the keeper most of the time. So they love putting their teammates into the direst of situations. So we knew that was a kind of a winner, really, that people really kind of took hold of that. And I was listening to the Miskatonic University podcast guys who were playtesting 7th edition, and they had a scene where I think they were in a warehouse and there was lots of wood and paper around, and something to do with fire, and they pushed the roll and they failed to push roll, and and suddenly this whole building was up in flames. You know, it didn't have to be at all, but the players had caused this and just made it worse for themselves. And it's it just really plays to the mindset of the Call of Cthulhu player. How can I make this worse for you and not me? So that seems to work pretty well too. Yeah.
I like in there. Do you find that it's best for Call of Cthulhu to have everybody do the complete character creation process together in there? And this is kind of going a little into the organized play of, or just talk about character concepts and then come back with it, or is there something in Cthulhu that's really gained by having the full process and the full creation all done with everybody together at the table?
I personally find it tends to work better if everyone is around the table and we do it as a shared exercise. However, I think, you know, all permutations are fine, and it works differently for different groups. But I find that being able to discuss with the players as a group their kind of character concepts, and particularly why are they all together. I mean, in terms of the organized play, it's obviously a bit more contrived because they're all university students at Miskatonic University, so it's fairly easy to say, well, we can find out very simply how you know each other. But in other sort of setups for scenarios and campaigns, sometimes, you know, if people go away and create their own character and bring it to the group without having first discussed it, you find quite a disjointed set of characters that is kind of okay, but there's not really any logic to why they would know each other or how they would get on, and so it sometimes just feels a bit more comfortable and a bit more accessible if you can build that group together, because you know, a few people have ideas and they will spark up each other, and you get these relationships that wouldn't normally form between the characters. So it could be that, you know, by the end of the session, actually you found out that actually your character is a brother or sister to another character that you would have never have thought about before. Or and obviously with the keeper, who knows what's coming, can obviously use that to kind of build in plot hooks with the characters. So it might be that an important NPC in the scenario that you're in could be a family member of one of the investigators, or could be an old acquaintance, could be a best friend, or whatever, which deepens the kind of involvement and motivations for the characters and the players in the game, and that kind of level of intertwining things tends to just bring the game a bit more alive for everyone. They become more invested, and has more meaning. It's got that kind of internal logic, which sometimes isn't there if players have gone away and just created a bunch of characters separately. But you know, it kind of, it works in all sorts of ways, and as long as people are happy to kind of, once they've got a character, think about it in the context of the wider group and the scenario, and maybe help, you know, tweak it a little bit here and there to kind of smooth some rough edges, then that can work too.
And also the part on the back where it talks about having an important key personality in your life or an important place in your life and all that. Do you find that also stuff gets a lot more strengthened, so that when the keeper starts messing with it, it has a stronger impact as the game progresses?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly, you know, things like your kind of connections to particular people or places, and even outlook, because if your investigators are all part of some form of organization in a loose sense, whether they're all students at the same university or they all are employed by some company that's got some kind of interest in sending out archaeological teams or research or whatever it may be, those backstory connections on the back of the sheet, it gives the players something to actually inspire them and think of, and you know, help them to kind of come up with some, but equally it kind of reinforces and builds them as well, because as people come up with ideas, it kind of sparks ideas in other people. So again, collectively, you know, it makes the character become more three-dimensional, and the things on the back of the sheet have some real tangible meaning, not only to the investigator, but perhaps to other investigators around the room as well.
You were talking about how other players could will throw in their 2 cents about how the failed push roll could be affected. Do you find that players do that also with where it comes to manipulating the elements on the back of the character sheet?
Um, I find that it can happen. It tends to happen in that kind of um, first session when you're kind of developing those. But as you go through play, and there becomes instances such as having a major wound or suffering insanity or meeting some kind of creature or experience which could either corrupt one of those backstory lines or introduce a new one. Yeah, players can, I've seen players chip in with an idea, or or build on an idea. The keeper has just sort of said, well, that person your sister that you have on in your backstory as a major person in your life. The encounter you just had has been really sour, so I think I'm going to corrupt that because you failed your whatever role to persuade her perhaps on some important thing. So I'm going to say that you two have become, it's rather than a good relationship, it's become a strained relationship. But another player might chip in, well, yeah, but what about this? He just stole from her. While she was out the room, he took what he needed from her handbag. When she gets in and discovers that, she's going to be even more annoyed. And actually, that's true. Yeah, well, we'll make it even worse then. That the relationship is, she's actually, looking to actually, accuse you of stealing, and it's going to be much worse next time you get together, or she's going to tell some lies about you or spread some rumors or gossip or whatever. And so it can build up, depending on the situation, as it were. But but players can, players are always full of good ideas. So they can throw in and chip in and make it worse than you thought it was going to be.
Do you find that the players cringe quite a bit when you ask for their character sheets to look at that to make those manipulations to it? Does it get is that where it gets really personal for the character players to the characters?
I think anytime you say, "Could I look at your character sheet?" they worry, don't they? I just want to actually look at their power score, perhaps, and but I'll look at both sides to keep them guessing of why I'm looking at it. I think there's a certain paranoia in any game when the keeper says, "Can I look at your character sheet for a minute?" And but certainly, I think that it's a natural kind of consequence of playing Call of Cthulhu, because most of the time the keeper's not going to turn around and say, "Oh, look at your character sheet," and they go, "Oh yeah, well that's not high enough. Let's give you that. I'll give you something good." It's always taking away. It's always going to be something that, well, that's I'm going to take that away. I'm going to make that worse, or whatever it is, because the nature of the game is horror and and helping the characters on this downward spiral to insanity and madness, effectively. So, yeah.
Well, I like it with the gear. That's one of my favorite things on seeing it. What is covering from Bouts of the Sanity is losing equipment, because you're usually in very isolated areas in these stories. And to lose valuable gear, which is key to your character, just seems like that's a huge push down that downward spiral.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, I think there's a couple of examples in Bouts of Madness when you first go insane and have this kind of period of madness, as I tend to call it, as when you're really not thinking straight at all, and the madness takes over, and you could find yourself, some hours later, having run through the jungle where you saw the strange creature, and run as far away from it as possible. But on the way, you now have just not got your weapons, and your bag's gone, and you just don't know where it is. So yeah, absolutely, yeah. There's lots of potential for that kind of thing. Yeah.
So let's talk about the organized play, the Time to Harvest. How did that get started? Was that is this your brainchild? Are the roots of this, and how is it developing as far as you're concerned from what you've seen?
Sure. The organized play wasn't my idea. We'd started up the the Cult of Chaos, which is a kind of a program to get games of Call of Cthulhu and other Chaosium games like RuneQuest played in local stores and libraries and schools, colleges, online, just to kind of Chaosium used to run the missionary program and different kind of iterations of that kind of GM kind of program, and we wanted to kind of get that back up and running. So that was started, and with that being started, the Michael O'Brien Mob is part of the Moon Design team, and obviously now works with Chaosium as well. Was keen to kind of build on that kind of head of steam and say, we could do some more organized play style kind of campaigns and events, across all our systems in time. But it would be really cool to start with the Call of Cthulhu one. And so I thought, yeah, that's a cool idea. That would be really cool. And I started to look about and think about what kind of campaign we could do. Because there was some talk initially about whether, could we run one of the old classic campaigns through this, and I thought that was an okay idea, but I knew that actually that would require quite a lot of restructuring and redrafting and effectively rewriting the whole campaign to make it work in that kind of format, and just by chance. I had a couple of writers had actually submitted a campaign a little while before that had been sitting on my hard drive waiting for me to kind of have a proper look at in terms of turning it into a book for publication, and it kind of crossed my mind that might be suitable from what I'd seen of it. So I had took another look and realized actually this would be perfect, because it was set in Lovecraft country. It involved the players all playing student characters who were all at the same university, so there was a reason for them to be together. There was an easy resource of bringing in replacement characters should they die or go insane, and the campaign was pretty cool. And that was submitted by Chaosium old time writer Brian Salmons, who's obviously had a lot of work published by Chaosium over the years, and Glyn Barras, who has had a few things done, but they'd worked together based on another idea with another chap Brian had worked with initially called Charles Segalis. And here was really pretty much a campaign done and written that, with a little bit of work, but not tremendous amount of work, we could turn into an organized play campaign that would hopefully fit the bill for what we wanted to do. So, and considering we wanted to kind of get the campaign up and running around the time the actual 7th edition books hit, we didn't actually have a long lead time, which was why I was reluctant to kind of revisit something like Shadows of Yog-Sothoth or Masters of Nyarlathotep, because that would potentially take a lot longer to actually kind of remap and redo. So basically, I set about kind of
and it's fun to have something new.
Yeah, and this, I also felt that it would be kind of cool, especially if it was the first one, to do something that was really original, really new, and would have an extra level of excitement just because of its newness. So I then set about kind of editing and then reformatting some of the work so it would work in a more modular way, and filling in a few gaps and elaborating a little bit more where needed, and doing a bit of writing on the campaign that the guys had done to make it work for the for organized play, which is and turned into a time to harvest, and we've made that available to everyone in the Cult of Chaos, and we had a lot of people sign up as well because they wanted, they heard about it and wanted to get involved. And the Cult of Chaos has grown rapidly, since that announcement, because a lot of people wanted to get involved and play the campaign. So we've now got well over 1,000 different members of the Cult of Chaos, involved. So you can feel, we can feel great that the initial mission of just getting Call of Cthulhu played in as many places as possible, and with the campaign has really amplified that. So it's happening all over the world, which is fantastic.
One of the things I love about organized play, because when it was very heavy in Star Wars Saga, the Dawn of Defiance was their kind of organized play thing, and the beauty of it was all the keepers and GMs coming together to give each other ideas, to help each other boost this up, or show, hey, this is how I characterize this person, or here are some resources I made of things, and we're already seeing that pop up in droves on there of keepers helping keepers tell the best story possible.
That's the other real beauty of organized play, as you say, and we have the Chaosium forums at brp.com, brp Central. And on there, what we did, we set up a secret forum only accessible by Cult of Chaos members who were running the campaign. And we just kind of left it open to people to use it as they will. And obviously, as you say, pretty straight away, people have been going there and building a massive resource for people running the campaign. So whether it's kind of additional player handouts, NPC photos, period pictures, some general advice, reports on how their first game went, or advice for how could they run, if this situation happens, what would they do, or just general queries about the campaign in itself. So it's built this great resource. So if you're an experienced keeper, it's something you can dip in and out of and take what you will and add to. But if you're a new gamer who's really coming into role playing in Call of Cthulhu through this campaign, and this is the first time you've run a campaign, it's a fantastic kind of resource and well of experience from keepers around the world to kind of share upon, and you could draw from that and ask any questions and know that you're going to get some cool answers and helpful advice. So it's a real benefit to that, and hopefully we'll just continue to build as the campaign progresses through its parts as it goes forwards.
As the campaign editor, or I don't even know if you've run it yet, what advice do you have for the first part to keepers? What are the things that keepers should keep a really good eye on and make sure that they really do well in the part one?
Okay, the only thing the main thing I say is near the start of the first scenario, there's a little piece that says, by the end of this scenario, these things should have happened or shouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing to kind of write down on the sticky note as you play to remember. So, because certain characters in the campaign may reappear later. So, whilst we kind of make allowances for sometimes, certain key non-player characters might meet an untimely end in series one, if the investigators decide to go that way. We can rework things like there's some advice later in the campaign to do that. But in the main, it's ensuring that, those things in that little block of text that say, by the end, try and make sure that they have found out this piece of information, gone to this place or done it. I can't remember them all at the minute, but done these things. Then that's a good basis, because you can't go far wrong if you only do these things. So it says, by the end, I think there's 3 pieces of information that the players need to know. So as long as you've given them those 3 pieces of information during the course of that scenario, you're good to go, and it doesn't really matter what else has happened. That's the key core of it. But my general advice is to just take your time, don't feel rushed. I said in the kind of keeper advice up front is that there's no way with hundreds and thousands of people running this around the world that we can all play it at the same pace. It's just impossible. Mm-hmm. Some groups will meet once a month and play all weekend and do it in effectively one big session. Other groups will meet weekly and play for 2 to 4 hours, and it might take them 4 sessions to get through the first scenario. Another group might meet bi-weekly and do the same. So it doesn't matter if you finish it in a month or you finish it in a day, whatever. The next parts of the campaign are all coming out on the 15th of the month following. So the next part will be the 15th of May. So as long as you're comfortable that you're running it and you've got time to read the next part before you need to run it, that's all that matters. So be comfortable, take your time, and don't feel you've got to run episode 2 on the 15th of May when it comes out that day. You know, you run it when you're ready to run it. So there'll be natural breaks, and just take your time and enjoy it, and don't feel overwhelmed with information. Just concentrate on the bits where the players are at the moment. You know, where are they? Who are they talking to? That's all you need to worry about. Then when they move on, just focus on that next scene. Don't try and worry about the whole thing. And particularly, just concentrate on what's in the actual scenario in front of you. Although the first piece of information that came out with Scenario 1 was a campaign overview that mentions other characters and other things that aren't in Scenario 1. Don't worry about those. That's just a bit of advice, just a bit of information for you to get an idea that there's a bigger campaign behind all of this. Forget about them. Just concentrate on what's in Scenario 1. And then when Scenario 2 comes out and you move on to that, just worry about what's in Scenario 2. Don't worry about what's coming ahead, because all the scenarios are very modular, and you haven't got to worry too much about what you do in a particular scenario that is going to affect the future one. Too much anyway, to a degree. But wherever possible, we try and give you some advice about things. Please don't kill this person yet. If you do, fine. We just move on, and you just accept that person's gone, and find another way to put the information in that they've got, perhaps, or whatever it is. But it all should work, pretty seamlessly. And
so keepers shouldn't try to be pushing people at a pace, but letting it be an area of letting the players just enjoy it, enjoy talking to the people, enjoy doing their projects and things, and letting them go at their own pace.
It's kind of a yes and no. If the players are doing something that's interesting for them and for you, great. If things are starting to get a little stale, or they're not quite sure what's going to happen, where they're going to go next, move the pace along. I think part of the keeper's job is to kind of pace the game, and there is a way to kind of just actually spend a long time in Scenario 1 just doing normal stuff. And that's okay for a while, but that will get a little dull for everyone eventually. So you have to kind of push the pace a little bit. And there are events and certain things that happen in Scenario 1 that are there for the keeper to say, okay, I'm going to do that now. This now feels the right time to do that. And so, to push things along and to move things forward. So it's a kind of a bit of both. Give players enough time to kind of get into their characters and to absorb the atmosphere of the game and the locale, and meet a few NPCs, but don't feel you have to kind of squeeze all the blood from the stone in that first scenario. That you never know, they might be going back there, or they might see certain NPCs again. So you don't feel you have to impart every single piece of information that's in Scenario 1, because there will be opportunities for some of the information to kind of come out in other ways, or in future encounters, if it gets missed the first time.
I've been rereading at night, reading to the wife some Lovecraft, and I was realizing that all of his protagonists seem to be completely fish out of water no matter where they go, and that got me thinking about part 1, where all the students, in a sense, be completely out of water by where they're being taken to, or a character who comes from a small town and somehow got away into a university and knows how to work the system would be just as fine in there. But that doesn't feel as very Lovecraft. What's your take on that?
I think you got to do what's right for the game you are playing and the characters and people you're playing with. If someone's playing a student character from a small town and sees a lot of similarities in terms of the way that they view things with the town of Cobb's Corners, which appears in Scenario 1 of the campaign, then fine. It's not like they know anything about Cobb's Corners. It's not like they know any of the people or the history. That's why they're there. So it's not going to hurt if they feel at home there. It'll only hurt when it starts to not feel home there, perhaps, if things happen or whatever, and may have more poignancy later in the campaign, perhaps, if they feel some sort of a kinship to the town. So I think that's fine. Equally, it's fine if they are all, students who feel they're going to the middle of nowhere, and why, really why are they here? They'd rather be in Arkham or the big city with all the modern conveniences of the 1930s. That's fine too, because you can play on the kind of alienation they're feeling, and feeling the discomfort that they're having to rough it in the sticks, and sleep on wooden pallets, and not in hotels, and it's discomfort and miserable, and great. Yeah, we'll play on that as well. I think it just comes to what the players bring, what each player brings to it in terms of their character and outlook. Then utilize that as you will as the keeper. But I think they're all valid, and they can all they all can work in certain ways.
Cool. And my last question, I jotted this down late last night as I was reading Reanimator, and there's points in there where it's brought out pretty clearly of the bad fate that's going to happen at the end of the story. In modules and where for keepers, where you have smart players that kind of see where the story is going, what strategies do you have for still making it creepy, making the story, making it cause their hearts to pound, even when they've kind of know by the title or have figured out early on where the story's headed?
Well, I think number one, specifically with this campaign, they may think they know where it's going, but I can guarantee they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do. I know where it's going, and I don't think many people will have figured out exactly where they're going to end up at the end of it. And also including things like, oh, I know what that monster is, or I know what the monster's going to be. Well, actually, things have changed up, and they're not always quite what you expect them to be, from a sort of the game term. But in terms of being the keeper, and I think what you have to do is misdirection. Playing, if they think they've seen it all, then show them something different, show them something new, show them something unexpected. And if that means just kind of tweaking the scenario a little bit, then that's fine. You've got to use it for your group. And if you've got a bunch of guys who have been playing Call of Cthulhu for 30 years and have seen it all and are not scared by anything, fine. Well, change it, change the monsters slightly so they're slightly different to what people would have normally found, or change the situation, and sorry, and play on their characters' backstories. Find out what their fears are and play on them. Put them into unusual situations that they weren't expecting, or where they have no control and feel powerless. Because they're the kind of buttons that you can try to find, and if you can find them and press them in the right way, that helps the players to then start to think, oh, actually anything can happen. It's not what I expect is going to happen. It's going to be something else. And therefore that kind of fear factor can kind of come back to it sometimes in that way. It depends. Some players have seen it all, and no matter what you throw at them, they're just going to go, well, it's like this, and they'll deal with it in that way. But in the main, try and find out what makes your players, or particularly their characters, going to feel uncomfortable or scared, and try and engineer that to happen in that way. The unexpected is always a good fallback. Throwing them a curveball makes them question things.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us, and congratulations on the release of 7th edition Call of Cthulhu.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Garrett. And I hope you have. I'm sure you will. I hope you have a great time playing the campaign, and playing many games of Call of Cthulhu there on after. So thanks again.
Thank you. And a quick question, not for the podcast, but one of our groups is doing a game group where they want to do all the games that take place in colonial America. Do you know of any Call of Cthulhu supplements or things that focus on that, on the Miskatonic Valley in the 1700s, early 1800s?
There's two answers to this. One is Curzon published a monograph called Colonial Horrors or Colonial Terrors, which you may still be able to get as a PDF or maybe print on demand through drive-through or something like that. it's not specifically Call of Cthulhu. It's more generic kind of colonial horror. Um, so that might be of interest. I'm not sure. What you're really after is Colonial Cthulhu, which is a that setting, that historic setting, as a series of 3 books, which is actually being done by one of our licensees called 60 Stone Press. And it's written by the lead writer on it is Kevin Ross, who's very respected kind of Call of Cthulhu writer from back in the day. Now they've been working on Colonial Cthulhu for some time, and they're just in the process of actually revising it to 7th edition. And I believe that they were looking for playtesters again, and that was only a few weeks ago. So whilst it's not available yet, it might be worth going to 60 Stone Press. Put them into Google, you should find their website. And the guy, 60 Stone is one word, 60 Stone Press. And Adam Crossingham is the guy who runs that company. And if you're in time, he might say yes, you can have a look at it if you're going to do a bit of play testing of it. But otherwise, it's probably not going to be out for another year or more, I don't think. Okay. It's been about 6 years in development, so it's going to be a little while before it comes out. But that is exactly what you're looking for, basically.
Okay.
So it's just unfortunate timing's not perfect because it's not ready yet. But get hold of Adam if you can, and drop him a line. You know, he might be able to do something if he's still taking playtesters. So
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. And
that's okay.
It's a beautiful game.
Indeed. Yes. No, absolutely. Well, it's been good chatting.
Good chatting.
And have you got gaming happening this weekend, or is it a free weekend?
This is a free weekend. I'm getting ready for next Saturday is where we start our character creation and session 1. So
you kind of bit of prepping and a bit of reading and relaxing this weekend.
Yeah, relaxing, going through the forums, seeing people's advice, and then going back through the module and going, okay, here's my take on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. Well, drop me a link to this when you put it up, and I'll link to it and promote as well and that kind of thing. So that's all cool.
Will do. All right. You have a wonderful weekend, man.
And you. All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.